This is a video on how to complete a binomial expansion. On page 20 of the log tables we have the binomial formula written out for us. This is quite long and can look a bit unwieldy, so we're actually going to focus on this part of the formula. So I'm going to keep that rule at the top of my page just to remind me of the structure that I'm going to use as I begin to work out my binomial expansions. Two things just to notice at this stage. First of all, this symbol, you may have seen it before, it's sigma. It just stands for sum, so it means we're going to be adding up a number of terms in our expression. And also this n and r in brackets, we say that as n choose r, and on our calculator it appears as NCR directly above the division symbol on the calculator. So we'll have to press shift and divide to get to that in a minute. Okay, so let's look at an example. So we've first of all got p plus q to the power of 4, and my instruction is going to be to expand. Sometimes they might say expand and simplify. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out my lines one below the other. The first line that I'm going to use, I'm going to refer back up to my formula here, is going to have n choose r. Now the n, you can see again in the rule, it's the power on the bracket. So I'm going to use 4, and I'm going to choose r. And you'll notice here in the rule that it says r equals 0. This is your starting value for your r. So 4, choose 0. And then I'm going to break up my bracket, and on the p, I'm going to put a power of 4. And on the q, I'm going to put power of 0. Okay, this is only the first term now of many. My next term I'm going to write directly below this first term. This is going to help me keep track of the patterns that develop over the course of the binomial expansion. Okay, so the next line is going to be 4, choose 1, p to the power of 3, q to the power of 1. So notice what's after happening. I had 0, now I have 1. I had 4, now I have 3. I had 0, now I have 1. So I'm increasing this number, I'm decreasing this number, I'm increasing this number. Here's my next line, 4, choose 2, p squared, q squared. If you think you know what the next two lines are going to be, pause the video and see if you can write them down. There's the next line, and there's the last one. And the way that I know it's the last one is that I'm after getting up as far as the 4. So let's just double check. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's no harm doing that quick little check at the end of that section. Also notice another thing, which is that my powers are outside my bracket in every case. Okay? It's important to do that at this stage. So now my next job is going to be to take all that information and evaluate what I can. So I'm going to use my calculator on the 4 choose 0, 4 choose 1, etc. And I'm going to apply the power to each bracket. An important fact to remember at this stage is that a to the power of 0 equals 1. Anything to the power of 0 equals 1. And I'll be using that rule straight away in my calculation because you can see here I've got a q to the power of 0. Okay, I'm going to use the calculator so to work out 4 choose 0. So I'm going to type in 4, then shift, divide, and you can see on my screen there's a C comes up there next to the 4, and then 0, so I've got 4C0. I'll press equals, and I get an answer of 1. I'm going to apply my powers to my brackets. P to the power of 4 is just p to the power of 4, and q to the power of 0 is just 1. Okay, I'm going to keep going down through the individual lines here. So, and again, if you feel confident about this, pause the video, try and do it yourself, and then play and see if what you and I have matches. Okay, and again, I can see a bit of symmetry going on here. My numbers here at the start are symmetrical. I've got 1, 4, 6, 4, 1. So a nice little pattern happening there. And I've got decreasing powers of p and increasing powers of q. And my last line now is going to be just to multiply all this out and write it as one long final answer. Okay, so I've got 1 by 1, p to the 4. And for my subsequent brackets, then it's very straightforward, multiplying out. And there's my final solution. Again, just notice there that a to the power of 0 is 1. So when I had q to the power of 0, it turned into a 1. That'll always happen on the first line. And on the last one, p to the power of 0 came out as 1. Okay, so here's our next example, x minus y to the power of 3. So you'll see here that the main difference I have this time is that I have this minus in the middle, but everything else is going to stay the same. Just to refer back to my first example for 2 seconds, just notice how in my first block of information I kept all my powers on the outside and I only brought them into the brackets in the second block of information. I'm going to have to make sure to do the same thing every single time. It's particularly important here because of that minus. This time we'll start with 3, choose 0, so it's the power here dictates the number that we start at. And then I've got x in brackets to the power of 3 and minus y in brackets to the power of 0. The brackets around these terms are important, and it's important the power is on the outside. I'm really emphasising that because it really matters. So I'm following my pattern like the last time. Okay, so I've completed my first block of info, and I know that I have because I'm after matching my numbers here at the end, 3, 3. Just take a second here to double check. 0, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, and all the powers are on the outsides of the brackets. Notice that I had a minus y here, so the minus y gets written in the bracket at the end. It's really important that the minus is included with that y. Okay, so now I'm going to do my calculation. Okay, so same idea as before. I'm going to put in 3, shift, divide, 0. I can see 3c 0 up there. I'm going to get 1. It's always going to be 1 for that first value. And then I want to apply my powers, so x to the power of 3. Notice how I'm bringing the power inside the bracket now. And minus y to the power of 0. Oh, look, remember I said before, a to the power of 0 equals 1. Anything to the power of 0 equals 1. So that minus y to the power of 0 is going to be 1. Just notice it was a minus here, and now this is a plus 1. Okay? Next line now, so 3 choose 1 is going to be 3. I'll put a plus in front of that there. And then I've got x squared, that's easy. And then I've got minus y to the power of 1. Anything to the power of 1 is just itself, so I've got minus y. So notice the first guy out of the y was a plus, the next guy is a minus. These questions are all about patterns. Okay, so now what's the next line going to be? I'm going to have 3 by x, because x to the power of 1 is just x, isn't it? And then minus y is getting squared. So now if I square something, I'm multiplying it by itself. So it's a minus by a minus makes a plus, and a y by a y makes a y squared. So just notice again, this guy is a plus. And the last line then, I'm going to have 1 by 1. And what about this guy then? What's that going to be, do you think? What's going to go into that bracket? It's a minus y cubed. When you're cubing, you're multiplying a thing by itself 3 times. So it's a minus by a minus by a minus. And that makes a minus. To make things easier for yourself, you might notice over here that it's alternating pluses and minuses. So the first guy's a plus, and then a minus, and then a plus, and then a minus. And that pattern would repeat if I had further terms. And now I want to write out my final answer. I'm going to have to take those signs into account, of course, when I'm writing my final answer down, so just be careful of that. So I've got 1x to the 3 minus 3x squared y plus 3xy squared minus 1y cubed. Whenever you have a minus in the middle of your bracket like this, you're always going to have alternating signs plus and minus in your answer. Okay, so here's another example, a plus 2b to the power of 4. Just to remind ourselves how the rule looks again. Again, this is on page 20 in the log tables. There's my first line. Again, make sure that everything's in brackets and the power is on the outside of the bracket. There's the next line. Now, if you think that you know what comes next, pause the video and write them down. There's the next line. And the next, and there's the last line from that particular block of calculation. So again, just take a second to check that things look right. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, grand. And then I've got my powers on the outside of my brackets the whole way down, so that looks good. Notice too that I'm linking them all together with that plus down the side. And then I'm going to go and calculate. So you've probably noticed by now that in the first line each time I've got a 1 at the start and a 1 at the end. And my next line. Okay, so let's have a look. So 4 choose 2 is 6, a squared is a squared, that's fine. Now, 2b squared, right. I have to just watch out here that I'm squaring the 2 and I'm also squaring the b. So each individual bit, I'm distributing the square over the multiplication. So 2 squared is 4 and b squared is just b squared. No minuses to worry about this time, but they can happen too, so keep your eyes peeled for them. On the next line, I'll have 4 by a. I've written an a to the power of 1 here, but you can put in the power of 1 or you can leave it out, it makes no difference. And here I've got 2 cubed. Well, 2 cubed, you can use your calculator if you need to, is 8, and then b cubed is just b cubed. And then the last line, we've got our 1 and our 1 like we've had every time so far, and then 2 to the power of 4 is 16, and b to the power of 4 is just b to the power of 4. When I'm writing out my answer at the end here, I just need to be careful to make sure to do my multiplication of my coefficients. So don't miss, for example, that I'll have a 4 by 2 here. So 1a to the 4, and 8a cubed b, and 24a squared b squared, and 32ab cubed, and 16b to the power of 4.